In my novel called The Immortal Secret, my main character is someone called Dr. Benjamin Mann. Benjamin is a curator at the Louvre, and one thing that he loves to do late at night is just to sit in front of the portraits and the artwork and examine them, every brushstroke, to figure out who are these people and just to admire the artistry of them. And I gave Benjamin this quality because I'm like that. I love that. I love visiting galleries. And one of my favorites is a Louvre because it's in Paris and I love Paris. And I have a favorite portrait in the Louvre, and it's Titian. It's a portrait by Titian, and it's of a young nobleman from Mantua who lived during the Renaissance. And the portrait is called Man with a Glove. And when I stare at that portrait, what I love is the emotion that Titian gave this young man as he's staring out from the portrait, because he's staring out into kind of infinity. And I love that. And he's kind of just, analyzing probably where he is at that time in life. And I love what I find so incredible is nobody knows who this young man is. Nobody knows his name. Perhaps at one point they did, but it was definitely all the information was lost to time. And I just find it incredible because if he knew after having that sitting with Titian and getting his final portrait done, that it would live for really, it's that portrait's almost, it's over 500 years old. If he knew that he would become immortal and he would have visitors, over millions of visitors visiting the Louvre every year looking at him, I think he would just be blown away. So I was so intrigued by it. I did some of my own research, and what I found out about him, the little that there is the journey that he traveled on. And he went from Mantua, from the private collection, to Charles I of England's collection. And Charles I was the monarch who was beheaded by Cromwell. And from there, he went to a wealthy German banker. And then he took a journey then he landed in Versailles, where Louis XIV acquired the portrait. And then it finally ended up in the Louvre. So I was so inspired. I thought I should create my own portrait. I'm so fascinated by immortality because when you think about it, there's not very many things in this world that are immortal, but art is immortal. Art is one of the things that are immortal. So I wanted to create my own portrait, and I wanted her to go through a journey in time. So I created the Immortal, which again is a portrait of a young person, a young woman. And she's someone who was dabbling in dabbling in the whole idea of how to become immortal. So we look at her story that way, and it's fascinating how, in a way, I was sort of inspired to create this portrait and send it on a journey. And it all started with the man with a glove in the Louvre. I always tell people that you owe it to yourself to follow your dreams because we're only here once. And as I look back at my novel, that line that you're only here once, it kind of just doesn't resonate with me anymore. Writing my novel shifted something fundamental in me about the way I look at life. As I've lived this story, moving along with my characters, the idea of only being here once, it's really begun to soften for me. What I came to feel instead is that life is a journey, not a single moment with a hard stop at the end. And in the book, my characters are offered a different path, one that steps outside the linear arc of life and into something more circular and more continuous and even endless. And strangely, I found that idea less frightening than I expected and truly more comforting. It made me wonder whether what we call the end is simply a transition, that perhaps the journey doesn't stop, it just changes form. And there's something kind of deeply hopeful in that. The idea that the people that we lost aren't gone. They're just ahead of us on a different part of the path. And, I don't claim to have all the answers, and really, I don't think anyone does, but I'm really an idealist at heart. And writing this story opened me up to the possibility that this life may not be the only one we experience, that maybe So it might be something enduring, something that continues, kind of quietly and beautifully beyond what we can see. And perhaps in some symbolic way, we all carry our own version of the portrait, my portrait of the immortal, and something that holds a piece of us that lives on for us even as we change. So maybe in the universe, we all have our own portrait that's hanging, and maybe, and maybe that's what it is. It just continues to go on. When I look at my 10 years of doing the immortal, an entire decade, it blows me away as much as it does anyone else. But the one thing I found about it was that I discovered a few things about myself. I guess I'm a perfectionist. This is quite funny because I did not know this. Truly, I didn't. And I think others really knew this, but I realized, wow, I am like, I could stay with this forever. I love it so much and keep on editing it. And it was my husband who finally said, if you don't publish this, I'm going to. And so that did make me send my baby out the door. But I really loved the process as well. I loved writing from 11 to 1 every night, and I was so religious in doing that. And I really loved disappearing into the story I because I love history. I love the idea of immortality. I love people who are flawed and they're going on the hero's journey. So there was something about it that I truly was so in love with. I still to this day miss it doing that, which tells you need to write another book. But yes, the writing process was really something that I just loved so much. But something else that happened on the journey was I lost my sister. And I lost my sister. She died within 1 month. So it was something that it's really indescribable that for you to lose someone so important to you, and sudden death is really something that's so hard to deal with. But it really gave me insight into what my characters were going through, particularly my main character Benjamin, who is really on a spiritual journey, really, and is meeting with a number of people along his journey across Europe. And so it gave me really that depth to understand what happens when you do lose someone that you love so much, and how you look at your life in such a different way, and you are looking for answers, and then you become in a way part of you're going on your own journey as you're writing about your main character going on a spiritual journey. And it just helped me so much in terms of the evolution of my novel, because I could bring that insight and that depth and emotion to my characters because I had experienced it as well. There's a line from Marcus Aurelius that I really love because I feel like it defines my main character, Benjamin Mann. It's not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Benjamin is a man who's lived a privileged life, yet he's deeply unfulfilled. He gets cancer and it's not even a wake-up call for him. And art is the only thing that brings any joy to his life. So when his grandfather disappears and he's the most important person to him, Benjamin finally is pushed to do something noble in his life. And the first thing he does after his grandfather disappears is he goes looking for clues, and he rips open the immortal and he finds a golden book within her frame. And it has clues in it. So he goes off across Europe where his grandfather was last seen, and he meets a series of enigmatic women who are connected to his grandfather, and they share the same obsession, the desire to escape death. And through these women, Benjamin starts to learn more about his grandfather, and what he ultimately discovers is quite unsettling. These individuals he's meeting are not truly living. They're kind of like him, they're just running. And that fear of death has stripped away any kind of meaning in their lives. And this, I find, is where that central question of the novel sharpens. If we could escape death, would we actually want to? And Benjamin finally comes to realize that immortality is not a gift, it's a mirror, and it's exposing what's missing. And for those who lack purpose, love, connection, eternal love doesn't solve anything. It only prolongs the emptiness. So in the end, Benjamin's journey finally forces him to confront a truth that he's long avoided. The problem was never death for him. The problem was how he was living.